Good morning. It is a good morning. Beautiful weather, this fall weather today. Whether you've been coming for years and decades, whether this is your first Sunday, what a great weather Sunday to come today. I'm the Reverend Nick Cable, and I serve as minister of this congregation joyfully the past 5 years through non-pandemic times and pandemic times, through ups and downs, through all the adventures we have taken together as a congregation, of which we seek to be a community of hope and courage, where we celebrate love and work for justice. Today begins a 6-part sermon series and for the fall, and it's going to be really helpful for our preparation for the sabbatical this January that I'll be taking. You can see a little bit more about it in this beautiful hardcover outer piece if you're wanting to look ahead. And just a reminder, because it's still new, you don't take this one home, but you're more than welcome to take the inside home. We use these every week. After the service, I hope you'll stick around for coffee and conversation. If you're new, hope you'll feel welcome. And I hope if you're a long timer or somewhat new or longer than new, then you feel free to introduce yourself and enjoy the beautiful grounds, enjoy coffee on the patio, enjoy this great day that we have together. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and whomever you love, you are welcome here.
To Acknowledge Our Ancestors by Alice Walker. To acknowledge our ancestors means we are aware that we did not make ourselves, that the line stretches all the way back, perhaps to God or to gods. We remember them because it is an easy thing to forget that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life, in spite of the pain, the sorrows, is always a measure of what has gone before. Let us now gather near the hearth this morning and share our ancestor stories.
Would any young people be having not too much fun, but enough boring that you'd want to come and hear a fun time up here? Lenny, Holly, Braden, never too big. Nancy, any other children or young people? Nancy is not too big, no. Lenny, have you ever opened the Wonderbox, this box, before? Do you want to help me? You want to help me? You just kind of open this right here. Oh, perfect. That's right. Let's open it up. Oh my gosh. Would you look at this? Do you mind helping me? Can you turn around and hold this up? It's all right. Okay. Just hold that up. Do you know what number that is? What is it?
1.
It is 1. It kind of looks a lot like a 1 because of the thing. What number is this? What? It's a 7. That's a great number too. All the numbers are great. So this is the number 7, and we're going to talk a lot about numbers today in their time for all ages. You all love numbers, right? Yeah? Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about something that is rooted in lots of indigenous traditions. Those are from traditions that long predate when most of us came to the United States, or what was this part of the world. It is an indigenous wisdom that tells us that we have this power in our minds and in our hearts to think beyond ourselves alone towards something that we call, that is called the 7 generations. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that. You want to help too? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to put this 7 down. I wonder how we can factor 7 out a little bit more. Let me maybe figure this out here. Okay. Do you want to hold this one? Here, Holly, you hold this one and you stand right there in the middle, right here in the middle. Go down a step. Okay. Well, Holly is just 1 going on 4. So she's 1. Okay. And then typically there might be someone else. There might be a parent or a grandparent or even a great-grandparent that she might be lucky enough to know. Can you scoot over a little bit towards the middle? I'm going to stand right next to you. Keep going. There we go. There we go. So there might be 3 generations, number 3, that go before her, that have come before her, that she might be lucky enough to know or be told stories about as a child and as a young person. Okay, well, that's 1, and this is 3. Nancy, do you mind just holding this for a second? Okay, great. So let's see if there's another number, because that's 3 and 1. That's 4. How much we got left? Okay, no, let's do this one. And do you want to come stand over here, Lenny? No, we'll leave those in there, sweetie. Okay, you hold this one. Another 3. 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay, so then Holly may someday, it's not a requirement by any means and not a value that you need to abide by, have a child or have grandchildren or even have a great-grandchild. So there might be something where not only is there 3 generations back, but there might be 3 generations ahead. Sometimes when we think of the 7 generations, we don't actually learn about it. And so we think about 7 generations ahead or 7 generations back. We need to do actions that will impact 7 generations from now. But it's actually 7 relating to the single person, each of you, and the 3 generations behind you and the 3 generations before you. And whether that's biological children or societal generations. Okay, so I wonder then if we might have a couple volunteers. Steve, you look like one of my relations. Why don't you come up here? Tom, do you want to come up? You just look eager. So we can stand here, and then you can hold one, little buddy. Okay, great. I love this. This is great. You guys can all stand on the bottom level, okay, Holly? You want to stand down there? We're good. There we go. You can pick it up. Good. Okay, Holly, do you have yours? Where's yours? Here you go. Perfect. Okay, and then we need one more. Oh no, wait. Oh, this is it. No, we need one more family member. Oh, Michael, come on up. This looks like Holly's great-grandson. That's great. Perfect, right there. And then Lenny, you can come right here. And now this is you. I'll take your 3. Perfect, that's good. All right, let's see. Oh, we got one more. Well, right now we're in the one portion of this story. Okay, so you just hold it right here. I'll hold it right here. So sometimes you want to hold the 3? Here you go. Here's a 3. Okay, so sometimes we think of ourselves, I'll take the 3 again. Sometimes we think of ourselves as just one person and our actions are connected. But in fact, in many ways, we are connected to a few generations above and beyond, or at the very least, we know some of the stories about generations that have come before. And so today we're going to talk more about that and remember that we are not only here and now, but we are then and what still might be. You can go back to your seats, family, and we will sing our children off to their classes. Thank you, young men. This is a congregation whose generosity is seen in so many ways, in the way you volunteer, in the way you show up, in the way you support our children and young people as you rally and support the work of justice and building a better world. And also through your financial contributions, the ways that the lights stay on and I'm here and staff and beautiful music allows for us to continue to make this campus a beautiful space, a welcoming space for so many in our community. Your generosity each and every week and your generosity during the time when we launch our pledge drive, which will be in a few weeks, is what keeps this 55-year legacy of hope and courage alive. I'm going to invite Ann Beatty up, who is a member of our board, and she's going to share a little bit more about generosity and its place in her life.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to tell you a true story. This really did happen to me this past week, early in the week, before I found out I was going to be doing this today, which was just a couple days ago. But I woke up and I had this dream, and I woke up really happy, and I thought, this doesn't always happen. I wonder why that happened today. And I said to Nancy, whoa, let me get that dream back. And I had a couple, and the first one kind of faded, but in the second one, I was imagining standing here like this in front of you. And in my dream, I was looking at every single face and thinking, oh, that person is so generous. And then I'd say, she, da-da-da-da, or he, da-da-da-da. And I realized that I could say that about every single face that I saw. And it just filled me with this rather unusual happiness. And after I had been up a little while, I thought, well, where are these people? And I thought of one who so often fills our sanctuary with flowers several times a year. And I thought about another couple, you'll know who you are, who work so hard keeping the grounds beautiful. And another who makes sure we have coffee every morning. Actually, we're hoping Nancy's getting that done right now. But others are so faithful at having done that. And the he, she, they who sing for us so often and play the instruments so often. Actually, I'm kind of partial to the saxophone, but and on and on and on. And I thought of another one who every time he comes in, he just lights me up with his smile. And another one who is so curious and brings this gift of curiosity every week. And of course, all those who bring compassion to one another with every encounter that they have. And I could go on, and it was such a great start to the day that I thought we could participate in that together, maybe for just a couple of minutes this morning. So right now, I invite you to take a breath and let your breath drop down into your body to where you can feel your own goodness. It might be here, might be in your gut. Place where you can feel your own gratitude. And let's allow for a moment for you to feel grateful for somebody in this congregation who might come into your awareness right now. Might be somebody I've mentioned or somebody else. Can you feel that place of goodness in your body, and out of that place of rooted in goodness, you're grateful to that person? I experience us as a congregation so rooted in generosity of all kinds, financial and otherwise. And as I think of you, I now invite you to take another breath in that grateful space, out of that grateful space, to think of a gift that you bring to this community, and feel gratitude for that gift. I hope we're recognizing again how we, in feeling this and acknowledging this, are a part of a great circle of giving and receiving at UUCCI that we focus on every October. It's kind of starting right now. And I've come to think of this, as I was thinking about it the last couple days, as a flow in which we all participate. We receive a gift, we give it, but we better turn around because we're about to receive another gift from someone else. And this flow keeps going. And when I think about it as a flow, I can relax more than having to think about it, whoa, I've got something I got to give it, which is how we often feel. I also think about it as kind of a dance, and maybe we can imagine this time of thinking about the future out of the rootedness of our goodness, which comes out of that rootedness as a dance and as a flow, and be able to relax and release our gifts into this community. We sing about that. We sang about it last week. I thought, oh yeah, Anne, you've just said something so original. We sang about it last week. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. I think we'll probably be singing that again this month, but that describes it. May we dance together this fall.
We have one reading and one reflection. The first reading is by Joy Harjo, and it's entitled, Perhaps the World Ends Here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
Storytelling is the only superpower that humans have due to the evolution of our powerful brain and the development of language to spill out the contents of our brain. And all of us have unique stories to tell, make no mistake. My Irish ancestors put Patrick, age 14, and Bridget, age 13, on a boat, all alone together, in 1848 to escape certain death from the potato famine. They were set to work in the Massachusetts textile mills until Patrick broke free to work on the railroad that took him here to Indiana. My German ancestors fled their family farm in Rehe, Germany, to escape the Prussian wars. They had the promise that a new German colony was being built in Texas. So Ludwig and Charlotte decided to go. They took 3 young children with them, and the youngest 2-year-old died of disease on the voyage over and was buried at sea. And then their boat began to sink just 3 miles off the coast of Galveston. So they were told by the captain to throw everything they had, all their belongings, overboard, so the craft could slowly drift to the shore. Their troubles were then confounded by the fact that the wagons and supplies that were supposed to be waiting for them had been confiscated by the United States Army for the raging Mexican War. And so they walked 300 miles from the Gulf of Mexico to New Braunfels, Texas, in what was called the New Braunfels Trail of Tears, because half of that party did not survive. Eventually, they too found their way to Indiana, into Indianapolis, where they found a small but thriving German community. Now, genealogists can trace the lineage of names and dates, births, deaths, marriages, back for centuries. But I believe it is the stories told with the breath of blood relatives over and over that make those names and events come alive. Now, I'm lucky. My father told me about Patrick, who grew up to be a wild, shanty Irishman who lived a fierce, drunken life, digging ditches that drained the swampy land in Tipton County. And my mother shared that Texas story of our Somme relatives every year when we made Christmas cookies with the recipes that Charlotte brought over in her head, the only remnant of her German possessions. Each generation has an obligation to live in their own time. And I can't even begin to imagine the hardships my ancestors faced. But for them, that was just the way things were. They faced each day and the challenges before them with whatever resources were available. And then in the evenings, or at family gatherings, they gathered close and told their stories to their children, who were nourished by their strength, shocked by their circumstances, and left with a legacy to keep that narrative alive. Now, luckily, 2 of my relatives began to write down the oral traditions. My dad's cousin Bob wrote all these Irish tales tracing our lineage back through the ancient kingdoms of Ireland. But it was the more recent tales of Patrick as a struggling young man who eventually, fathered 9 children, one of them Edward, my grandfather. Those are the stories that mean the most. On my trip to Ireland a few years back, I found the Connolly Pub in the village of Leap that is still owned by my family. And I felt in my soul the connection. And my mother's grandfather, Albert Somm, the youngest son of Ludwig and Charlotte, took the time to write down his own memoirs of the family in turn of the century Indianapolis. Now, my favorite stories of him are these. He was a successful business owner in spite of 2 burned to the ground fires, which frightened him so much that every Christmas, when my grandmother put lit candles on the tree, he sat nervously beside it with a big bucket of water. He was a close friend of James Whitcomb Riley, and so we grew up on those poems and stories. And he was a leader in the Democratic Party who became the first postmaster of Indiana. And yet, he stubbornly refused to ever buy a telephone or a car, even though he lived all the way to 1949 to see these technologies flood the world. But he was famous for saying, no, it'll never catch on. Who needs that? 15 years ago, I picked up the pen and began writing down all of the stories I could recall that were shared at our family gatherings. I just hope that my children and grandchildren will someday find something in those stories to inspire them, to entertain them, or maybe just turn on the light in their hearts about the rich heritage that our ancestors created for us. They could care less at this point. That's because they're busy living in their own time. But someday they may wonder why we tease them that, now you've got your Irish up now, or you've got that stubborn German patience today, don't you? And I want them to remember just exactly what that means, and to keep the stories alive, because I firmly believe that we are only here now because some very good people a long time ago thought that we would be worth it.
Today marks the beginning of a 6-part sermon series, which I've titled Life Roots. Over the next month and a half, we will all engage in the critical human work of remembering, rediscovering, and understanding the roots that have shaped us into who we are as individuals and as a community. As different as our life journeys may be, we are rooted here in community, now at this time and in this place, together. The late UU theologian James Luther Adams said, "By their roots you shall know them." Indeed, by engaging in our life roots exploration, we can then consider the new possibilities that are before us, that are perhaps just beneath our feet, ready and longing to spring forth in the years ahead. May ours be a journey of love, dear friends, as we begin this series of reflections, a journey that pulls out of us our deepest sense of who we are and what in us is true and worthy of carrying forward on our shared path. May it challenge us and prepare us for whatever may come in the days ahead, and grant us hope and courage to persevere and arrive at the harvest of our good labors together in community. The origins of this sermon series began with the planning of our first sabbatical together, which will begin this January and last 4 months. As your called minister, we have committed to one another to engage in shared ministry, to grow together in love, and to support one another along our journeys. Most ministers take a sabbatical about every 4 to 7 years as a way to grow and renew in mind, body, and spirit, as well as offer us all of us, an opportunity to assess how we can deepen our bonds of shared ministry in the coming years. The theme for the sabbatical explores the same themes we will reflect on during this fall sermon series, and the programs and adventures we will undertake this winter during the sabbatical will also correspond to these topics. Indeed, our ministry this fall is to engage in the good work of preparation, like a farmer preparing their fields for winter so that a rich harvest may emerge come spring. We begin then this morning with the first of 3 reflections over the next 3 weeks on the roots that define much of who we are and who we have become in life. Specifically, we are looking at the topic today of family, of our biological ancestry as a source of definition and connection. This is the place to start because we all have a family of origin. We all came into this world the same way. We didn't ask to come into this world. We were born into it. And from that birth, we have been on a journey ever since. Now, I want to make this clear from the outset. The topic of family is complicated for every person for reasons. After all, our entire existence is wrapped up with a group of people with whom we have, let's say delicately, relationships of varying quality. For some of us, we grew up with close and positive relationships with parents and guardians. Others may have had fraught relationships or have struggled to stay connected with parents or family members as adults. Some of you may have challenging relationships with your siblings, and some of you may have no siblings at all. Some of you may know your family history really well, like Peggy, and some may feel really disconnected or cut off from this knowledge. Sometimes the lack of knowledge of or connection with our family of origin is due to pain we have experienced in our family life, or even injustices inflicted due to societal realities. But all of us, whether we feel good, bad, indifferent, or I expect a bit of all of these, we have a family of origin, and these intertwining of relationships shape a large part of our initial and ongoing worldview as human beings. In fact, some family systems theorists suggest that our worldviews and understandings of relationships are critically defined at a very early age. And because of this early impact on each of us, much of our future relationships as children, teenagers, young adults, and adults, whether it be with family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and even fellow congregants at UUCCI, they can often mirror some of these early dynamics. You might recall during my first year as your minister, I attended three-day-long retreats on the topic of family of origin. It was with other religious leaders across the Midwest, and we focused on family of origin, family systems, and how these networks of relationships and theories play out over time, especially in our congregational context. The title of this sermon, Family, we all got one, now what, is probably 5 years in the making. For from those 72 hours of coursework, I have continued year after year to reflect on my own family of origin, the key elements of family systems theory, and the way these theories are helpful in understanding dynamics that are present within our own congregation. We will talk a bit more about our congregation over the next 2 weeks, but today I'll just say how rare and beautiful it can be to choose to enter into community with people you are primarily not related to, and to choose to journey with them through life. It is a rare miracle in today's isolating and individualistic world. So now what? Well, I have come to believe that we must look to our family roots if we are to understand our place in this universe and our hopes and dreams of where we wish to go in this lifetime. While it may be painful for some or slim pickings for others, engaging with our ancestry can help fill in the picture and shed light on our current state of existence. For example, during my sabbatical, I want to understand how the heck I ended up here in Columbus, Indiana. This town wasn't even in my awareness when I entered seminary or my internship, but wow, when I did discover Columbus and this community, when I learned stories about all of you, something powerful drew me to this place, a place that I have now come to call with deep gratitude my home. What is that power, that intuitive feeling, that deep wisdom we all feel at times in our lives? And where does it come from? Where does it come from? Or perhaps a different question is unexpected but appropriate. When does it come from? When? Hear me out. I think sometimes our conscious or subconscious memories, perhaps dating back multiple generations, influence a lot of our motivations and decisions in life. Remember the indigenous wisdom summarized in the teachings, the concept of 7 generations. If each of us has a capacity to be influenced by generations past and consider generations to come, whether biological or societal, that lineage, that line of connection continues backward as far as the heart can imagine. And so ostensibly our actions today can draw some connection, likely unnameable, to ancestors of our past, even those from hundreds of years ago. I think about the stories I know of my family, and more importantly, I wonder about the stories I don't know. And I ask myself, did something happen in my past and that brought me to this crossroads in life? And the answer, I believe, is yes. I agree with the growing amount of research and theorists who suggest that through something called epigenetics, our psychological and social development as human beings mirrors and is shaped by what has biologically and genetically been passed down to us generation after generation. Both the hard sciences and the social sciences have been exploring the transgenerational impact experiences can play on individuals. And they are doing so through a unique lens, but I think very appropriately through the lens of trauma. Trauma. Now, this coincidentally is one of my other interests that has grown over the past few years because we have all been living in a way through a collective traumatic series of events due to the pandemic and other social and political and legal stressors. Trauma may also be a link that crosses generational lines because of the often life-altering impact these experiences can play on the individual, on the family, or a community. And so, as I consider my family of origin, I think both about what experiences they may have had that have paved the way for me to be here today, but also what traumas they may have experienced that shaped me as well. Consider, for example, the trauma of global migration. We don't often think of migration as traumatic, but the uprooting of one's life can be a deeply distressing and disturbing event, which is one definition of trauma. Let's listen again to some of the words Peggy shared from her family of origin's journey to this country. Peggy said earlier, "My German ancestors fled their family from Rehe, Germany, to escape the Prussian wars with the promise that a new German colony was being built in Texas. Ludwig and Charlotte lost their 2-year-old to disease on the voyage and was buried at sea. Their boat began to sink 3 miles from Galveston, so they were told to throw all their belongings overboard as the craft drifted to shore. Their troubles were then confounded by the fact that wagons with supplies waiting for them in Galveston had been confiscated by the U.S. Army for the raging Mexican War. So they walked 300 miles from the Gulf to New Braunfels in what was called the New Braunfels Trail of Tears because half the party didn't survive. Eventually, they too found their way to Indianapolis, where a small but thriving German community was forming. Our stories, the ones we know and the ones we don't, the ones we tell and the ones that go unsaid, can embody both tremendous resilience, perseverance, and triumph on the one hand, and also trauma and challenges and loss on the other. This is our great human reality, the condition with which our lives come into this world and accompany us along our paths. Both joy and sorrow accompany us as those accompanied as it did for those before. As James Blake wrote, joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, safely through the world we'll go. I believe that we were indeed made for both joy and woe, and likely made from both joy and woe. This is why during my sabbatical, I will go backwards, reach downward to my roots that have made my life possible, that have made my ministry possible, and to try to remember what is so easily lost in this life: connection. It is easy to lose our sense of connection in this life. For many, that is what happened and is still happening during this pandemic. So I will seek to remember who I am by exploring where I came from and who I came from. And I will walk the roads through German farms and family cemeteries outside Milwaukee. And I will travel east to the Atlantic and back to the 1600s, to the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the complicated history that is now mine to carry as well. And I will cross the veil from Europe to what it was, from Europe to what was imagined as a new world, returning back to Germany, to the land of my ancestors who would come to make a similar journey from Frankfurt to these lands as Peggy's ancestors, who were just about 60 miles up the road. I wonder if they knew each other. But these explorations backwards and downwards will not be undertaken alone. My mother will join me as we explore her ancestry, both in Wisconsin and in Germany. And my father and I will head east and back to the early days of our colonization of what would come to be called, with deep gratitude, home. I expect the adventures this January in the cold of winter will be both orienting and disorienting, clarifying and confusing, filled with a greater sense of self and a new series of existential questions. But what is true is that even as we explore time and place, looking for connections to what was, the real learning, the real discovery, the real remembering will be found in the sacred space between parent and child, and even, or perhaps especially, within my own heart. Within my own heart, where that wisdom that surpasses generation and understanding has resided likely all along. Dear ones, the journey forward requires a journey backward, downward to our roots, as we acknowledge the complexity of family, the pain and trauma, but also the resilience and joy of these rooted sources of life and continuity, that through them we may in the end come to find a fuller sense of who we are as individuals and as a congregation, and discover a new power, a new vision for what in us is true and to where we must go on our journeys ahead. And we will move forward. Dear friends, we must together, hand in hand with our roots, from when and whence we came and to where our lives are courageously calling us on. May it be so, and amen. Joy Harjo tells us the world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. Give birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial there. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray for suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will too end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating the last sweet bite. May it be so, and amen.